The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Dakota Joshua is about to get paid by the Toronto Maple Leafs. What?
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, happy hump day, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks, and also Canucks writer since 2013, currently with Daily Hive Vancouver. Before we dive into today's episode, we got to thank you for tuning in to Locked On Canucks, because guess what? It is your Canucks every damn day. We're part of that Locked On Podcast Network, and if you haven't done so already, what are you waiting for? Make sure you go like, subscribe, follow us for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, got to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet, baby. That's right. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Speaking of odds, we got to talk about what are the odds of Dakota Joshua staying with the Vancouver Canucks, because at this point, it seems unlikely that Dakota Joshua is going to stick around with the team where really he blossomed into a legitimate full-time NHL player with. So we'll get into the Dakota Joshua rumors, talk about his next potential contract, and also talk about replacements for Dakota Joshua with, again, the caveat that it seems like he's leaving the Vancouver Canucks. All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Canucks. But before we get into it, let me introduce my co-host, pulling an Elliot Friedman, recording from a car. Kyle Bhawan, what's going on, brother?
Yeah, that's why they call me the Hindu Elliot Friedman, man. I don't know if you've heard those comments in the comments below, but if you haven't heard those already, maybe we need to see more of those comments, okay? So let the people know, okay? Let the hockey world know that Kyle Bhawan is the Hindu Elliot Friedman, okay? I'm not the Hindu Luke Gaznick. Is that his name? Is that how I say it? Anyways, can I touch on that for a bit? Can I touch? Is it Gazdick actually, or is that a play on word?
Yeah.
It's Gazdick.
No, well, okay, it's both. But anyways,
no. Let me touch on it before we talk about Dakota Joshua possibly going to the Maple Leafs or the Utah Fireflies or whatever that team's going to be named. I think people are roasting Luke Gazdick a bit way too much. Okay. And they're making too much fun of him for being like an Oilers fanboy. And they're like, oh, how is this guy on the Hockey Night in Canada panel, blah, 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 covering the Stanley Cup finals when he's so biased, so Edmonton Oiler-esque, like blah, blah. Who cares? Who cares? Right now, the Oilers are in the finals, okay? They're people. I know it's a national broadcast, but they're people. You know, they're probably going to F with that a bit more, okay? You know, they're going to have more fun with that. It is what it is. Straight up. I'm not going to go out here and say that Hockey Night in Canada should go fire Luke Gazdick because he's made fun of the Vancouver Canucks. He's playing his fourth line role on the panel, still with the Oilers, chirping the Canucks. It is what it is. I would not mind if Kevin Bieksa did that if the roles were reversed. But here's the thing. Kevin Bieksa is not doing that, okay? No, straight up. He's too pro and, has gotten rid of the bias completely, whereas Luke Gazdick hasn't. I'm not trying to, slurp the dude. I'm just saying I don't have a big problem with it. It is what it is. We lost. Okay, get this camera right. We lost. It's okay. And now I'm seeing some comments too, like saying that he should get in trouble for saying that that the Oilers dusted the Canucks in Game 6 and Game 7. And some people are like, oh, what are you talking about? We only lost Game 7 by 1 goal. We got dusted, okay? Let's just lose in peace. It's okay. Leave Luke Gazdick alone. I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but I'm not that emotional because I'm seeing some of the emotion online. And I'm like, yo, just get over it. Get over it and focus on the offseason, Canucks fans. You want to put your energy somewhere else? Let's figure out what we're going to do with Dakota Joshua, because Trevor Beggs is telling me that he's going to the Maple Leafs. What? That's my little rant.
Yeah, I will say, and this was, it wasn't quite the level of Frank Saravalli, but, I felt like, again, Luke Gazdick was taking shots at Canucks fans. And, in fairness, there's some terrible people online and in Canucks Nation as well, just saying like stupid things, right? And again, it's just a sport at the end of the day. Like, don't be crossing that line about,
Bro.
hurting yourself or family or all that crap, right? But to take shots at the
Bro.
fan base, bro, you got to be able to take it baback a little bit, right? And it seems like Luke Gazdic hasn't been able to take it back. I mean, again, I'm not peeking at his DMs or knowing what's going on, but at the end of the day, again, if you're gonna dish it out, you got to be prepared to take it back. And I'm not sure if Luke Gazdic, for as tough as he was on the ice, it seems like he maybe is a little soft in terms of taking it from Canucks fans online.
Dude, okay, fair enough. I agree with what you're saying, right? Like, if he's gonna be up there on Hockey Night in Canada, you can't just be like taking shots at the fans, blah blah blah. It's a sensitive topic, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, Canucks fans were celebrating. We were about to throw a parade after Kevin Bieksa called out the Edmonton media. You know what I'm saying? It's all good. We lost. We just lost, okay? It is what it is, man. This is what happens when the Oilers beat the Canucks. And I got to tell the people again, what am I doing right now in Alberta? I'm doing a lot of business. I'm going to a wedding, but I'm also staying over at an Oilers fan's house. So I'm dealing with it too. But again, I'm not too emotional. Anyways, can we talk about Dakota Joshua? Trevor, shut up. Shut up, okay? Dakota Joshua. Is he going to be making too much money next season? Are we not going to be able to sign him? Are we going to sign him to a Brandon Tanev-like deal? What? And if we don't sign him, we're replacing them with who? A lot's going on.
Yeah, there's lots going on, but let's get into the rumors first and foremost. So both of these came from last week, but Rick Dolly reported that the Canucks offered Joshua a contract in the low $2 million range, which, come on, man, we've talked about it on the show already.
Holy.
Every day, that's nowhere close to getting it done. I've said time and time again, if Joshua hits the open market in free agency, some team's going to give him $4 million plus if he truly chases the money, right? Now, again, if he's more like looking for fit and a place to stay, maybe it's in the high threes, but that's why I think Joshua's contract is going to land in the high threes or the low fours. And, just reading the tea leaves, I just don't think the Canucks are going to buck up and pay that. Patrick Allvin said in his end of season press conference that the Canucks need to find the next Dakota Joshua. And look, I wrote about it last offseason. There's now articles being written about it again now that he's about to leave. Because, of course, that's what every organization wants to do. Like, look at the Florida Panthers. They found guys who have been cast away, and now they're making impacts and potentially helping them win the Stanley Cup. You need to find those guys in free agency to provide value. Dakota Joshua's done that. And you know what? I think he can play at value if he signs in the kind of like that mid $3 million range. But you are taking a risk if you start getting into that high threes and low fours. As much as I love Dakota Joshua because, again, he's a unique player. He can kill penalties. I think he can do net front of the power play.
Mm-hmm.
He pushed 20 goal pace last year. There's a lot of things to like about Dakota Joshua's game. But right now, I would put the odds of him staying in Vancouver just based on the smoke and what we're hearing at around 25%. I think he's more likely than not going to leave the Vancouver Canucks in free agency. Now, The other thing I'll say, too, is that there was a report from James Myrtle of The Athletic. And he was basically debunking a notion that Dakota Joshua would not return to the Toronto Maple Leafs because that's the organization that drafted him, that let him walk initially as a free agent, chose not to qualify him. Now, James Myrtle is saying that he's hearing that Dakota Joshua would be open to a reunion with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, Kyle, what are your thoughts on that? Would you be hurt at all if Dakota Joshua left Vancouver for the Toronto Maple Leafs, or do you care?
I think I would be hurt if he just left in general because I think that he's a glue guy and he's actually a pretty good player. I mean, we saw the Canucks make strides with their penalty kill later on in the season. Dakota Joshua was a big part of that. I know Dakota Joshua didn't pick up a ton of points in the playoffs, but there were a couple moments where he took over games, sort of, kind of, right? He had multi-point games, helped us win games. I feel as if his ceiling is a bit higher than we think. That all being said, to touch base on the whole Toronto thing, yeah, we might lose him to Toronto, right? They have to make cultural-like changes. Joshua, physical presence, again, a good player, and also a player that's familiar with Craig Berube, right?
Mm-hmm.
Craig Berube, former coach in St. Louis, now the coach in Toronto, and now look at the work that the Canucks did on a guy who, again, used to play for Berube. Why wouldn't he want more of a polished product back in the fold? It wouldn't be maybe that hard of a transition to get him to play a certain style, to tap into the message and all that jazz. But yeah, all in all, like, Trevor, touch on this. Like, we brought up the whole thing with Lindholm yesterday. Go check out that episode, right? Like, how are we going to replace Lindholm if we lose him? bro, if they lose Joshua, again, for the Canucks to take the next step, they already have to get better with the roster they already had. So you have to find a better player or a player at value that's, again, Dakota Joshua-like, which is not easy to do. It isn't. He's but don't you think when he's going is a bit of an outlier? And like I hear all these things like, oh, you can replace him with Riley Tuff and all these other project type players, bro. It took 12 months and Rick Tocchet calling him out last September for Joshua to get his ish together. So the Canucks are not in a position to wait that long for players to get their shit together. You know what I'm saying? Like they have to find a guy who's already done it, not another guy like Joshua. Not another guy like the Joshua Project, which he was again 2 seasons ago when they brought him in. They have to find that already been doing it, and it's going to be hard if they lose Dakota Joshua. It's just the truth.
Yeah, 100%. I think again when the Canucks initially signed Dakota Joshua, they were a bottom of the barrel team, right? They were a bottom 10 team in the NHL. You still want to go and target those guys, but like Kyle, you make a great point in terms of next season. The goal is to get better. The goal is not to take a step back, right? This Canucks team ideally should be a Stanley Cup contender. We talked about them being in their window right now, So yeah, there's all those project players like, I don't know, Riley Tuff. I think that guy gets brought up because he was a high draft pick and a big body, but that's a shot in the dark for sure. But like you said, Kyle, I think in free agency, if Dakota Joshua walks, they do have to find someone near his value. Now, like you said, when he's on his game, he is an outlier because of how physical he is, because of, his presence in front of the net. You can find players that provide the same value as Joshua with maybe not the same style of game, if that makes sense. So on the other side, I do want to touch on a couple things, a little bit more, dive in a bit deeper on the contract projections for Joshua from AFP Analytics. Like we'll talk a bit about Brandon Tanev, who again, that contract was signed by Jim Rutherford. And let's again talk about the replacements for Dakota Joshua. Before we do that, let's shout out our friends over at FanDuel. It's that time of year. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Now, Kyle, I don't know if you heard this yesterday when I did the ad read, but I maybe you were rubbing off on me, but I did mention the odds, right? The odds on FanDuel right now are that the Florida Panthers are minus 130 to win the Stanley Cup. The Oilers are plus 105. And man, oh man, when I see Connor McDavid as the underdog, I kind of like that bet, man. I kind of like it. I'm not going to do it. I'm too emotional. I'm too biased, but I kind of like that bet.
No, I was talking to my cousin about this yesterday. Again, I'm staying with an Oilers fan, and don't look at the fact that the Oilers have been like grinding out wins, and don't just use that as the formula for success of the Oilers. If you are looking to, put some money on the line here in the Stanley Cup Finals, look at the fact that Connor McDavid scored one of the goals of his lifetime, which is saying a lot in a clinching game, in a Western Conference Final game. And then also hear him after the game. The guy was dreaming. All in all, like you just said, Connor McDavid as an underdog is, if I was a betting man and also not loyal to the Vancouver Canucks completely, I would put money on the Oilers, because I feel as if there's a new level to that guy's game that's about to come true. I know that's dark to say as a Canucks fan, but man, oh man, something's going to give there.
We'll find out in due time. Again, the Stanley Cup Finals start on Saturday. It's a long wait for the Oilers, the Panthers, and the rest of hockey fans out there. But if you do want to place some bets on the Stanley Cup Final or anything else, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, they are America's #1 sportsbook.
People, we back doing this, giving you an episode of Locked On Canucks no matter what. I'm in the streets of Calgary, parked in a Lexus, doing the show with my homie Trevor Beggs, not at the Don't Doze Art Lab. That being said, one love to the Don't Doze Art Lab for making a lot of this possible. On today's episode, well, what are we doing? We're talking about everything Dakota Joshua. Okay? Again, in my opinion, a really important player for the Vancouver Canucks. In my opinion, how are the Canucks going to go into next season losing guys like Lindholm, Zadorov, and Joshua? At the end of the day, they're going to have to pay these guys. You know what I'm saying? Fair value. There's a lane here for them to be savvy and for them to be aggressively, I wouldn't say cheap, but again, smart, intelligent. They got to get ahead of it and try winning a lot of these contracts. But man, oh man, I'm starting to think that, bro, Rick Dollywall's been saying a lot of these guys are having their hand out, just waiting for the most amount of money to be put in their hands. Bro, is there a world where the Canucks lose all these guys? Like, is this 2020 all over again? Because we're not paying Joshua 3.75? You know what I'm saying? Something's got to give.
Something does got to give. And yeah, I think they're going to end up paying one of these guys, maybe potentially, although we did hear reports that the Canucks might be ruthless this offseason. And does that mean letting everyone walk? But here's the problem with letting everyone walk is that if you're going to go out and replace these guys in free agency, you're likely going to pay fair market value for those guys as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not really an easy answer here for the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, I think something ruthless would be trading Filip Hronek, which again I don't think makes a ton of sense because unless he's really doesn't budge on that $8 million, because he need good defensemen on this team. That was the reason why the Vancouver Canucks were so successful last season. And hey, a quick shout out to Sportsnet's Dan Murphy for golfing with Nikita Zadorov. Doing the pitch to try to make him stay right. Maybe at this point it is Zadorov who is the most likely to say. Like I would put odds of Zadorov staying at closer to 50% now, which is crazy because if you asked us this 2 months ago, Kyle, I think we would have said probably 75% chance that Joshua stays and like a 10% chance that Zadorov stayed, right? Especially prior to the playoffs. So, we'll see what happens.
If you asked me a couple months ago, it's like Hronek is staying for sure over Zadorov, literally. And now it's kind of the other way around. And I mean, you brought up the whole Dan Murphy photo, right? If you haven't seen it yet, he's golfing with Nikita Zadorov. You know who else is golfing with them? JT Miller, which is the bigger story, the bigger piece of that puzzle. I do think Nikita Zadorov is staying, but more on that on another episode. Beggsy, you also did touch on something, right? Me and you kind of like been hitting this over the last 45 seconds, right? If the Canucks let all these guys go, it's going to be hard for them to replace them. And, they're going to have to spend their money elsewhere. And just going to have to put this whole puzzle together, right? Rick Tocchet, a big puzzle guy, and it's going to make the whole puzzle harder to put together if there's 4 or 5 new pieces. Again, you want some consistency. I know this team only made the second round of the playoffs, but, bringing back 2 of these guys is really, really important. Man, oh man, you got to add this too. You think JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, Thatcher Demko, Brock Besser want to go through it again? The last time the Canucks made a Game 7 in round 2 of the playoffs, what happened? They lost half the team. They lost half their friends. That is not going to happen again to this core. You cannot do that to the faces of the team. So I know we're hearing reports of the Canucks cheaping out or trying to get Joshua for $2 million, whatever, right? Patrick Allvin, Jim Rutherford, that's their job. They got to win some contracts here. They're trying to build a contender. At the end of the day, though, my heart does tell me that they're not going to let that happen. So they're going to get this contract done, and I'm curious to see what you think that number is actually going to get to be.
Yeah, so the interesting thing with Dakota Joshua in the contract, too, is, again, I'm going to bring up the Brandon Tanev thing again. So Brandon Tanev signed that crazy, was it 7-year deal worth $3.5 million, or 6-year deal, my apologies, worth $3.5 million. And at the time, his numbers on a point per game basis, they were Joshua outperformed him, right? Brandon Tanev hit more. But Dakota Joshua has scored at a better rate than Brandon Tanev did before he got that contract. 6 years, $21 million, $3.5 million per season. And Brandon Tanev, obviously he's now with Seattle, but he's kind of, I guess he's lived up to that deal in some sense of the word. He's still a useful bottom 6 player, right? So I wonder if the Canucks go down a road like that with Joshua. And try to sign him a long-term deal to keep the cap down. Now, again, if you're keeping the cap down, $3.5 million per season wouldn't be keeping the cap down. And again, they gave Brandon Tanev that contract after, he scored a lesser rate than Joshua. But, I do think for the Canucks and Joshua, it's probably got to be probably at least 4 years and somewhere in that like mid 3s, I'd say.
I'm down. Again, bro. Trevor, I've already asked you this question twice during the assumption report that is everything post Game 7 of round 2, right? All we've been talking about is, assumptions, guesses, trying to put this roster together. But this question has to come up, and I think it's going to come up with Nikita Zadorov too, right? Like, can a guy like Dakota Joshua get better? Not only just stay at the same pace, aka get better and just continue to play a really, really vital role on this team that's now going to have a lot of pressure on them. And I think so, man. I look at his physical attributions. I see the way he skates. He's way smarter than I thought he was when it comes to like his hockey IQ, right? He makes good reads. Again, not the perfect player, but there is a lot of value there. Now, I want to bring this up too, okay? Because this means a lot. Look at D. Anderson, okay? I also think Joshua, and this is a comment from D. Anderson, one love to you. I also think Joshua will not be as productive if he moves, okay? If he stays away from the Canucks. He says this because he thinks his chemistry with Garland is leading to a lot of his success. Don't get me wrong, I think Dakota Joshua is talented, but I could see him being like a Yannick Hansen. Now, again, we talked a lot about Garland being such an important part of this team, and individually speaking, he's a better player than Joshua, drives a lot more play, but you do get some of your best version of Connor Garland when he's playing with Dakota Joshua, okay? In the previous 2 seasons or whatever, it was kind of hard to find any chemistry with Connor Garland and anyone else, and he found that with Joshua, and I know that's not really how you build a team. Like, you don't want to build a team prioritizing the importance of finding chemistry for your third line winger, but something tells me that, that is pretty important, because when those two are going, they're kind of lethal.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you make a great point. It took Connor Garland a long time to find chemistry with someone, and those two definitely brought the best out of each other. And I think in general, Joshua can have success away from Garland, but he's got to play with like a strong play-driving playmaker on his line, right? If you stick Dakota Joshua on a third line with like a Teddy Bluger and no Connor Garland, let's say, like his numbers are going to plummet. I can almost guarantee you that now. Again, this was a guy who last season scored at a half point per game rate. If he played a full 82 games, he would have been on pace for 20 goals and 40 points, right? So he's almost like a low, based on his skill set, the much he hits, he's a low-end bottom 6 forward. So I think that's why it's just for the Canucks to keep him. If they can keep him in a third-line role alongside Connor Garland, even if your center is Teddy Bluger or Pius Suter, like the Canucks are going to be in a good spot next season. So, again, despite the report saying that Dakota Joshua seems likely to leave, I agree with you, Kyle. Something in that 4-year, $3.5 million range, even kind of pushing the higher threes. I'm not really comfortable going over 4, but I think if you give him kind of a multi-year deal in that 3.5 range, you got to be happy with that as well. Kyle, I know we haven't touched on is replacements for Dakota Joshua, Casey Leaves. I think you and I both want him to stay in Vancouver. We like the fit. I think the potential price isn't too bad for the Vancouver Canucks. But again, let's talk about if he does leave some potential replacements. We'll do that on the other side. Again, you're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day.
Man, we're going to have a lot of fun tonight in Vancouver, all my real fans.
Yeah, but we back doing this no matter what, and that's talking about your Vancouver Canucks and the future of your Vancouver Canucks. My name is Kyle Bhawan. That right there is Trevor Beggs. I'm right now in Calgary. Trevor Beggs right now is in the most beautiful city in Canada, Surrey, British Columbia. We doing the most. Speaking of doing the most, hit the like button. It really does help out the cause here on Locked On. And man, oh man, subscribe to the channel. I think we're like 3 or 4 subscribers away from 2,000. And I don't know about you, Trevor, but I'm going to start crying if you hit 2,000 for real. I'm not going to get naked. I'm going to save that for a Stanley Cup win, but I'll start crying. I'm going to call my mom. I'm going to thank her for her support and, instilling so much belief in me, because here I am at 31 and a half years old, getting a YouTube channel to 2,000 subscribers. Again, like I'm not getting here if she's not supporting my dreams. So again, subscribe to the channel so I can make my mom proud.
Straight up, man. And hopefully my mom's proud too. I haven't talked to her about it, but hopefully she is, I imagine. I think my mom would be proud of the Canucks if they re-sign Joshua. But if they don't, I think there's a few players that could potentially fit the mold of a physical middle 6 winger. So I'm going to bring up 4 names, and Kyle, maybe I'll let you touch on any of them if you want, or I could ramble away. But if I'm looking at potential replacements for Dakota Joshua, again, there's some guys like Michael Amadio and Danton Heinen who are not really physical, but can really provide some middle six value. But if you're looking for physical middle six players, for me, it's Jordan Martinook, William Carrier, Yakov Trenin, and then we saw this guy in the playoffs with the Nashville Predators, Kiefer Sherwood. Kyle, did any of those names jump out to you, or do you want to say anything on them, or is it just kind of like F those guys, let's keep Joshua?
Well, like was the case with Dakota Joshua before we knew him as Dakota Joshua, right? I haven't seen a lot of those guys play consistently. And when you bring up, I feel like 90% of those names remind me of Sam Lafferty. You get what I'm saying? Am I wrong on that?
Yeah. And so I'll say this. I think I'll give a Cole's notes on everyone. I think Jordan Martinook, I'm interested in him.
I didn't hear you say his name. By the way, I didn't hear you say his name.
Okay.
That guy's effing crazy.
Yeah.
That guy's effing crazy. That guy is, in my opinion, not leaving Carolina. You cannot let that guy go if you're Carolina. No way. No way. That dude's got heart and soul. He skates hard. He's somewhat of a playoff performer. He bleeds red and white. That would be a dream to get that guy because he just adds a lot of character to the room. Yeah, that would be something else.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I think he can play a bit of center as well. He is a potential third-line center replacement. He's played mostly with Carolina, but if you look at his face-off numbers, he's capable as a centerman as well. And such a good playoff performer. So good defensively. Jordan Martinook, to me, probably at the top of the list if they lose to Dakota Joshua.
That'd be something.
Again, a little older as well, but yeah, he's a great player. William Carrier injured a lot last season. And he's not going to score at the same rate as Joshua, but he's had seasons with double-digit goals, and he's a physical presence. Yakov Trenin, he's just he's almost like a more physical version of Nils Höglander, kind of short, stout, not a good playmaker at all. He's he always puts up Cy Young numbers. I think he had 12 goals and 5 assists last season. But he's a bit of a little crazy little water bug out there. And then finally, who's the last guy? Kiefer Sherwood. Look, Kiefer Sherwood had 10 goals, 27 points in 63 games last year. Pretty good numbers for a middle six role. Again, he's a smaller guy, but he had over 200 hits last season. The guy does throw the body around, and we saw it in that series against the Nashville Predators. He does like to mix it up. So to me, he's a potential option to replace Joshua if he walks as well.
Yeah, I hear you. That guy, like a lot of Nashville players, to be honest. Remember, they gave the Canucks a tough time. Skated hard, played hard, good defensively. All in all, Joshua, like you said, he's a 40-point guy during a full season with Connor Garland. Maybe he's a 45-point guy. Let's not forget, prior to breaking his hand in Chicago, a game where, again, that third line absolutely dominated. If you remember, go watch the highlights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was, again, on the best third line in hockey. And I wonder, how long would they have kept that up? And what did Joshua's points look like? Because, we can talk about Joshua being this physical presence and, piling up the points and playing with Garland, blah, blah, blah. You have to remember, there's so much skill there. When him and Garland were going, I'm not going to say they look like the Sedins because that's not the truth, but they looked dynamic together. It wasn't bump and grind only, It was making plays, creating space, finding the open guy. A full season of that, especially with the Canucks having gone through a playoff run and especially with Rick Tocchet calling out Dakota Joshua last September for having a shitty offseason, leads me to believe that, again, there's more to that guy. And all the guys you just mentioned outside of Martinook don't really let me feel confident that this team can get better by replacing Joshua. Again, you want to talk about a guy who's 27, 28 years old, a lot to prove, and genuinely in love with the city. One of the few guys out of all the teams in the NHL that had a UFA talk so openly at the end of season presser about how he wants to stay in Vancouver. I feel as if the Canucks cannot let this guy go. They got to do whatever it takes. And I don't think that means Alvin and Rutherford have to pay him whatever he wants, but there has to be another layer of negotiation here to make sure that a deal gets done. Just convince him, take him out to a nice dinner. Just convince him you're a big part of this. We want to do something special. Make him feel more like a Canuck, and maybe you can shed off $250,000 per year off that contract. But don't be trying to shed off $500,000. You're talking to a guy that, again, had a career year after being a journeyman in the NHL. And last time I checked, he's probably still leading the NHL in hits in the playoffs. Again, he missed the whole round, but he was way up there. Dude's pretty incredible.
Yeah, 100%. Let's, again, we're both on team keep Dakota Joshua. I think if the Canucks can get the number under 3.5, they're winning that. 3.5 to 4 is fair value. Anything over 4 is probably a bit of an overpayment.
3.5. I like 3.5.
Let's get to a couple comments before we get out of here.
I like 3.5. You're right. 3.5. You saying 4? Whew. Dude, if he gets $4 million, bro, I think
if he wants.
No, go ahead. You finish.
I was going to say, if he really chases the bag, I think he can get 4 a season in free agency. But if he wants to play on a contender who's doing cap gymnastics, that's going to be a bit tougher.
If he makes $4 million, when or if I have a son, I'm going to make sure he hits everything. He hits everything in his way. $4 million for Dakota Joshua. Bro, I don't know about that, man. You know what's crazy about this whole situation? We went 31 minutes, and I know we're going to get to the comments. I got to go too. But we went through all that, and we didn't mention how, holy-ish, we're going to lose Dakota Joshua because we have Ilya Mikheyev.
Well, I think that's another episode coming up on Locked On Canucks is what do the Canucks do with Ilya Mikheyev? So maybe that's going to come next week. Maybe next week, who knows? But we will do a bit of a deeper dive on Ilya Mikheyev. Should the Canucks buy him out? Could they trade him? Is there potential he bounces back? We'll dive into all that.
Is he the next Dakota Joshua?
But
is Ilya Mikheyev the next Dakota Joshua? Is Ilya Mikheyev the next Dakota Joshua? Unreal. Look at this comment, okay? Ellie Pevitz. Who's the guy talking after inhaling all the helium? My name's Kyle Bhawan, and I'm the Hindu Elliot Friedman, okay? I'm not the Hindu Frank Saravelli. No way. I'm the Hindu Elliot Friedman. Trevor, take it away.
Let's go, buddy. Okay, a couple comments before we get out of here. SK93 saying Sammy Blais potentially for the fourth line. Like, Sammy Blais had his moment for the St. Louis Blues, but last season he was brutal. He had 1 goal in 56 games. Terrible underlying numbers. I kind of was diving into him looking for some free agents. I would pass on Sammy Blais unless it's like a 2-way league minimum deal to give him a chance to prove himself. But I will say this, SK93 also said replace Joshua with Trevor Beggs. Look, Sammy Blais is going to do a way better job than I do, but I appreciate the love, buddy. And then a couple comments from Kurt Richardson. Shout out to Kurt and all the commenters, but Kurt brought up a couple interesting ones. Kurt, maybe he's dialed in. He said, rumor has it, Hronek may sign in the $6 million range on a shorter-term deal, 3 years, and chase the bag in the next contract. If so, he's a slam dunk signing. Look, I think that's the road the Canucks probably have to go down with Filip Hronek, right?
Of course.
I think if you're signing this guy long-term, it's going to be low 7s at the lowest. I think the Canucks are better off signing to a short-term deal in that $6-ish million range and seeing what he can do over the next couple of seasons. If he were just to sign his qualifying offer and not sign a contract, which I doubt he'll do because he's arbitration eligible, he'd get paid $5.5 million. I saw a Sportsnet reporter put that in a cap projection. It's just like, that's the chance of that happening are sub 1%. And finally, one more comment from Kurt Richardson. Could we maybe trade for Frank Vatrano? It will be the final year of his contract. He would be a good fit in the top 6 and not cost too much. Here's the thing. I think he probably is going to cost quite a bit. So his cap is only like $3-ish million right now. I think 3.3 if I'm not mistaken. But Anaheim Ducks reportedly at the trade deadline, we're looking for 2 first-round picks for Frank Vatrano. Now, that price won't be as high in the offseason, but you got to think it's probably a first-round pick for Frank Vatrano, who great player, good goal scorer, went to the All-Star game. But a first for Frank Vatrano to me is still a bit rich. If you can get him for something less than that, I'm interested, but I think the price could be too rich for Frank Vatrano.
Yeah. A lot's going on, man. We live in the world of assumption, and I'm living in the house of an Edmonton Oilers fan, man. I can't believe that's happening right now. And, 10 o'clock at night, my cousin's eating crab curry. I don't know if you've ever eaten crab curry, but he's eating crab curry with his hands because I'm a Findu. And he's eating all this while watching Oilers analysis at 10 o'clock at night with me in the living room. So this guy's like a kid on Christmas. I'm kind of happy for him, which is, I know, strange of me to say. You may question my loyalty, but again, this guy's my family. All in all, though, F the Oilers. Beggsy, get me out of here, man. What am I doing? Get me out of here. Sign us out.
All right, let's get out of here. Shout out to the everydayers, occasional listeners, first-time listeners, new subscribers, and those of you who joined us on the live show on YouTube. We love each and every one of you. whenever you're listening, wherever you're listening. You are what makes Locked On Canucks what it is. We're nothing without you. And hey, close to 2K subs. You know, maybe I'll get 2K tattooed on my rear end. Subscribe. Do it. Do it up.
One
All right, let's get out of here. I'm Trevor Beggs. That guy's Kyle Bhawan, and you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.
Your Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the